Hey guys, and welcome to Gwent, the Witcher card game. My name is Jaggerous, and today I have an overview of the upcoming hotfix, which we'll see drop this week. And for a hotfix, there's a hell of a lot of card changes, but first and foremost, we'll talk about the fixes. So, during the mulligan phase, they'll no longer have that black background, which happens once you've mulliganed all of your cards, but before your opponent has done theirs. So you no longer have that annoying black background, which really you couldn't do anything with. On top of that, they've added a delay, which will allow you to see the third card that you draw on your mulligan, which is really useful. You then don't have to go through your kind of hand and try and work out what's there. Bloody Baron is now moved to the top of your deck at the end of the round rather than the start of the round. They've fixed some challenges where certain challenges, the leaders would have more than 3 copies of a card, which isn't possible in the Gwent deck, so they were kind of breaking the rules, so none of that. And they've also changed some of the trigger orders, so the way that things trigger will be fixed. So that's the fixes that they announced. There's probably more than that you'll see in the patch notes, but those were the kind of main ones I felt like mentioning. Now on to card changes, and we'll start with weather, because I know a lot of players are frustrated about this. So weather has been changed. Frost now damages one of the lowest units by 2. So it only hits the lowest unit and it does 2 damage. So that's kind of like what Rain used to do. And now Rain, instead of doing 2 damage to the lowest unit, it now damages up to 5 of the lowest units by 1. So Frost is single target and does more damage, whereas Rain can hit up to 5 units but does fewer damage. So Rain is better if they have lots of units on a row, whereas Frost is better if they only have 1 or if there's 1 unit that you want to hit. Fog is then the opposite of Frost. Now here it doesn't say one of the lowest units, but on stream they led me to believe that Fog is basically the opposite of Frost, so it will damage one of the highest units by 2. So they're no longer multi-target unless you play Rain. On top of that, Aeromancy now doesn't draw from the graveyard, so you can't use Aeromancy to replay a card. And Skellige Storm is now a 2-2-1 damage rather than 3-2-1. So previously Skellige Storm would damage from the left to right, hitting the farmost one by 3, then 2, then 1. Now it's 2-2-1, so it's a minor change. Next change to neutral cards, Tremors now hits 6 enemies rather than 8. And they've also changed Overdose, so now Overdose boosts 6 allies by 2. So Overdose is kind of the opposite of Tremors. Big changes to Blood-Curdling Roar, now an 11 strength card, but more importantly that bear is doomed, which means that bear's not going to be getting resurrected or eaten out of the graveyard. And actually, bear is no longer tagged as a bear, which it was previously tagged as, and that's the biggest change so far. Bear is no longer a bear, it's now a beast. So Alza's Double Cross, Marching Orders, and Decoy now boost instead of strengthening, so these actually boost the units, so then it means that when those units go into your graveyards, they'll lose that buff. Which is better for some, resurrection strategies and consume strategies, for example. We've also seen a big change to Olgierd. He's now 9 strength, but when he goes to the graveyard, he weakens himself by half. So he would go from 9 to, rounding up, I believe, so 9 to 5, and then 5 to 3. And then if you buff him up, obviously, then that half is going to be even bigger. Big changes also to Villain Trettenmirth. He's now 8 strength, but he only scorches once. And I think this is a huge nerf. At this point, if you're running Villain Trettenmirth, I don't see why you wouldn't just be running Scorch, because Scorch is a silver, so you're not taking up a gold card slot. And on top of that, it doesn't have a timer attached to it. So I think this change to Villain Trettenmirth is going to basically remove him from play, but I don't know how else you would have balanced him. Avalanche is now 8 strength, and Renew now resurrects a gold card from your own graveyard only. So you can't resurrect your opponent's gold cards, you can now only resurrect your own gold cards. They've made some changes to Roach in the order that she is summoned. So Roach is now summoned before gold cards resolve. So you summon your Roach and then whatever your gold card does happens. I do think this means that you can now Milver it again. So now what you can do is play Milver at the start of your turn, pull Roach out, and then draw Roach into your hand to basically gain a card as a method of card advantage. Changes to Johnny. He now won't trigger his ability if your opponent doesn't have the card color you choose. So for example, if you chose to, get rid of a gold card and draw a copy of one of your opponent's gold cards. If they have no gold cards in their deck, then that doesn't happen, so you don't lose your gold card, you don't draw anything from your opponent because they have nothing to draw. So you no longer have a negative effect if your opponent doesn't have the card that you're trying to draw. Then we have Regis. Regis consume buff is now from the base power of the unit, not a boosted unit. So for example, Regis previously you could consume, say, a buffed up Spotter. Spotters get buffed as your opponent reveals cards, and you could consume the Spotter and get a massive power swing. Now you'll still remove the Spotter from your opponent's deck, but you'd only get the Spotter's base strength, for example. So that's, I think, just a bit fairer, to be honest. You still get the removal, and you can still remove those big point cards from your opponent, which is in itself a good play. You just don't then absorb the huge number of points, which is kind of incredibly swingy. So that's it for neutral cards. Moving on to Northern Realms. Radovid is now a 5 strength unit. Shani is now a 4 strength unit with 4 armor. Priscilla, her effect will now trigger 4 times, and she doesn't go back to your deck afterwards. So you get your 4 points from Priscilla, and then you get your 12 points from the buffs if you play it. So she's effectively 16 points over 4 turns with her boosting. The K20 Siege support, now, if you play machines, they get boosted by 2 and 1 armor, and if they're not machines, they just get boosted by 1, so he's got more machine synergy. The Ballista and Trebuchet no longer ignore armor when they're damaging units, so armor is now actually more protecting. You can't just play those and, you know, kill units even though they have armor. The Bloody Baron, he is not boosted now by units moved to the graveyard at the end of the round. So previously I think there was a bug where if units got moved to the graveyard at the end of the round, it would count them as being killed and buff the Bloody Baron, which isn't meant to happen. And Dandelion now shuffles your deck, because previously he'd show you the deck order and then not shuffle the deck, and that was kind of a problem. So he shuffles the deck now. They've also done some small power changes to a lot of the units, like gaining 1 strength, but you'll be able to see that when the patch drops. Moving on to CELAENO Harpies. They are now a 3 strength down from a 4, so a little bit of a nerf there. Corinthia has seen some big changes. So Corinthia has gone from a 5 strength unit to a 7 strength unit, but instead of moving 5 enemies to the row and applying frost, he now moves only 3 enemies to the row and applies frost. And obviously it's the new frost, so the frost that does 2 damage to the weakest unit on the row. So I think he's still pretty good. I mean, you still got the 7 strength there, you're still stacking a row and you're applying frost, and frost is, you know, it's not going to be as strong, but previously I think Corinthia could be a win condition in and of himself, so this change I like. Succubus is now 5 strength, which means if you're giving it to your opponent, it was previously 6, now it's 5. It's fewer points for your opponent, but if you keep it for yourself, it's fewer points for you. On top of that, her effect now triggers at the end of your turn. So her effect would trigger after 2 turns have played, which means you have 2 turns to react. Saying that, I still think she's an incredibly strong card. I think that this slight nerf to her is just going to make her even stronger, because the thing is, she moves the highest unit from your opponent to you. So you can't counter her by playing another unit to, like, protect the highest unit, because that unit would just be higher, so you give them a better unit. The only counters you really have are you can move your units off the row, which is quite tricky to do. You know, you have to have very specific cards to do that. Or lock her, which means you would need to have Dimmer Team Shackle. So I'm quite worried about Succubus and her power level. I think she's a very strong card. And I mean, even if you only move, like, a couple points, like, you're still getting a net gain. So, I don't know. We'll see. Nithril, frost damage has been increased from 2 to 3, so because frost has been changed, now if you play Nithril, the frost will do 3 damage to the lowest unit, or, you know, a random unit, not a random unit, but the random lowest unit. So if there's more than 1 unit with the same strength, it'll hit one of them. Its armor's been removed, and he's been buffed up to 7 strength. Then we have the Wild Hunt Hound has gone from 5 strength to 4 strength, so a little bit of nerf to the Wild Hunt Hound. Moving on to Scoia'tael, the Elven Mercenary is now loyal. So this is really cool. You can now play Elven Merc on your own side and then draw the special cards and have a choice, rather than previously it was disloyal. So this is basically, instead of giving your opponent 2 points, you're giving you 2 points. So it's gone from being -2 to +2. So it's a 4-point change, which is pretty significant, I would say. Then we see some power changes to a bunch of the units. So Sappa's gone from 7 to 8. Dwarven Merc is 5 to 6. Say Synthesis is 8 to 9, I believe. And then Trap has been changed to 6 strength, and the Fireball Trap damages all units by 2. So it no longer ignores armor, and it used to be 3 damage to all units, now it's 2 damage to all units, so it's a little bit less potent. Ithlinne, she's been nerfed. She's now 5 strength disloyal, so you give your opponent 1 extra strength, but she still has the effect of playing a special card twice. I still think, you know, she's a very good card. In some ways, I think this nerf isn't enough, because if you can get Lightning Potion, you can basically give yourself 24 points if you have 3 units out. So we'll kind of see how that goes. Saying that, Scoia'tael is not that good at the moment, so I suppose it's okay. Then we have Nilfgaard. Emir has been buffed, so he's now got 6 power. Calvé, on the other hand, has been nerfed, so he can no longer draw gold cards. He can only draw bronze and silver cards. But also, golems now get played before the leader's ability triggers, which means that if you play your leader, you'll thin all of the golems out of your deck, and once the golems are out of your deck, you then pick which card to play, which means you won't have stuff like golems ruining your draw. Roach, you still will, because Roach doesn't get pulled by leaders, she gets pulled by gold cards, but, you know, it is what it is. Stefan Skellen is up from 9 to 10 strength. Spotters and Alchemists are both up 1 strength, as is Cynthia. And Seret has gone from 7 to 9, so a little bit of a bigger buff to Seret. Leo Bonhart now does base power damage. So previously you could boost up a spotter, reveal the spotter, and deal a butt ton of damage. Now it only does damage based on the base power of that unit, similar to the changes to Regis, in that Regis higher vampire eats and only buffs by base power. Same with Leo. Okay, so last but not least, we've got SKELLIGE. So I'll start with the card everyone wants to know about, Savage Bear. So Savage Bear has been buffed to 7 strength. But they fixed the bugs in the way that it's ordering, so that now it should be that all card effects resolve before the bear starts shooting things. If you lock it, it shouldn't start shooting things. If you kill it, it shouldn't be shooting things. I think they've kind of sorted out a lot of the bugs associated with him. And on top of that, he no longer hits spawned units. So for example, if you played a Harpy and that spawned 2 eggs, it won't kill the eggs. If you play Temerian Foot Soldier, you only take 1 damage, not 3. Like this, I think, is a pretty okay change. I'm not too worried about Bear. I wasn't like, you know, crazy unhappy about Savage Bear before. So now I think this is a good change. I think this is kind of the right change. Shield Maidens are no longer veterans, so they don't buff up each round. Because what would happen is you get to the final round, you'd play your Shield Maidens, they'd be 15 points in strength, plus the damage that they each deal was 6. So you get 21 points of strength out of Shield Maidens, which wasn't really very balanced. So they're no longer veterans, so they stay 3 strength throughout the game. Morkvarg has seen the same treatment as Olgierd, so he's now 9 strength, and that halves on Resurrect. If you discard him, he's then going to lose half his strength, so he's only going to be a 5 if you pull him that way. So he's better to be played by hand than via discarding. Hjalmar has seen a similar nerf to Tibor, in that Hjalmar is now 13 strength, so net gain of 23 points if you do play it. And the Lord of Undvik is now doomed, which means if he dies, he goes to the graveyard. I think that, I don't know what that exactly means. Maybe previously you could resurrect him and kill him again, and that would buff Hjalmar a second time. I have no idea, but there was clearly something weird going on there. Axemen have lost their veteran status, but they have been buffed up to 3 strength. And honestly, I feel like Axemen wasn't necessarily the problem with Axemen. It was stuff like Bears and Tremors and Frost, and all of these have seen changes to, you know, make them less potent in the number of targets that they hit. So I think this will bring Axemen more in line without destroying the archetype, which I do like. I think this is a positive change by CD Projekt Red. Berserker Marauder now strengthened for each damaged ally, so if you have a lot of damaged allies. And Warcrier no longer has its effort attached. So Warcrier, if you play him, he'll just buff up the units that are damaged to the left, basically. So I think they're trying to make self-harm strategies a bit more common with these changes. Heimdall from Cambi is now 16 strength rather than 11 strength gold, so it means that if you're playing a Cambi strategy, you're going to have a few more gold card points on the board in order to obviously get that win, because they've given a little bit more points to your opponent, because obviously Heimdall gets played on their side. Ermion has gone from a 6 to a 7, and consuming raiders no longer counts as a discard, which means if you consume a raider from your opponent's Skellige deck, it won't then be like, oh, they discarded their raider, so I'm going to resurrect it. No, it got et, okay? And I'm going to be Scottish and say it got et, as not it got 8. It got et, it's not coming back, basically. So that's pretty cool. And I did actually tweet my Gwent patch predictions, as you can see here. And I said, renew only on your own cards. That was correct. Frost hits biggest and smallest, so that wasn't correct. Frost only hits the smallest by 2. Weather doesn't multi-target. That was correct. And no veteran on Shield Maidens, which was also correct. So if anyone wants to send me a prize, I'm more than happy to accept it. And if you guys are interested in patch predictions and that sort of thing, I do suggest that you follow me on Twitter at Jaggerous. They mentioned some changes to ranked. They said that at the moment it feels impossible to hit rank 21. And what they were trying to do with their rank changes was to make the top of the ladder quite stable so that you could be a bit more experimental without, you know, tanking ranks. But make it so that climbing at lower ranks was possible and easy to do. They didn't really say if they changed anything. I think they are making some tweaks to ranked and how that works out. But it wasn't very clear what it was that they were changing in that respect. So I'm not really sure what's going on there. However, they did say that now you can't lose rank points below 1k MMR. So if you lose a match below 1000 MMR, then what happens is you lose no points. So basically you should be able to climb to 1k MMR with just enough time, even if you're like the worst player in the world and only win 1% of your games. It's still possible. And this basically makes those early rewards accessible to everyone, even if you're inexperienced, which makes ranked, you know, a bit more fun to play. For newer players, it gives free-to-play players some more rewards, so it's kind of more beneficial to them. The more kind of ranks that they play, or the more seasons that they play, the more rewards they can get. So that's a nice little change. On top of this, they've changed the refund system, which I totally expected them to do. Last patch, basically, you could scrap a premium card and get its full value in scrap back for free. So what people were doing was crafting premiums. So buying meteorite powder, crafting premiums, scrapping those premiums, and transferring your meteorite powder into scrap, which obviously was unintended. And so they've changed it basically. So now if you scrap a card, you'll get its scrap value. If you scrap a premium card, you get its scrap value plus the meteorite cost of crafting it, basically. So you get its full crafting value. So if I was going to turn a card into a premium card, let's say it was a legendary card, that's 800 scrap and then 400 meteorite or to turn it premium. So if I scrap a premium card, I will get 800 scrap and 400 meteorite powder. Hopefully that makes sense. And you only get 3 days now with the refund system rather than 5 days. So just be aware of that. And right at the end, we did get a few spoils for upcoming features. So we have UI changes. So you can now have friends chat in-game. So if you want to chat with your friends in-game while you're waiting for your opponent, that is totally doable. You can, you know, BM your opponent to your friend. They can BM their opponent to you. You can have a wonderful time. It's going to be pretty good, I think, you know, friends chat. I think it's going to be annoying because when I'm recording videos, I don't want my friends chatting to me. So we'll have to see how that works out. But I think for most people, it's a good change. And they also showcased some new art for some upcoming cards. We don't know what cards they are, but here is the art. So this is the Nilfgaard card. If you guys have any idea who this is, or, you know, any guesses as to what kind of card it would be, you know, let me know in the comments below. And they also showed this card, which I'm going to identify as a cockatrice, because I played that Witcher contract in my Witcher 3 Let's Play, and that looks just like the cockatrice. I killed him literally today. Or the Shrieker, I believe is what it's called in-game, so I don't know if this is going to be cockatrice or Shrieker, but this is clearly a monsters card. So that's my kind of verdict on that. So those are all of the changes. Let me know your feels in the comment below. I think mostly these changes are fair. I think they dealt with Skellige without being too harsh. I'm a little bit worried about monsters. You know, monsters didn't see too many nerfs, so I think monsters are going to be kind of on the up. And I think that Nilfgaard will be quite good now. Scoia'tael, I think, still needs a little bit of love. I'm not really sure where they are, but I'm really interested to play Northern Realms machine strategies, and I think the changes they made to weather are completely fair. I don't know if weather is dead. I think that remains to be seen. I think the problem now is running, you know, loads of weather is maybe not the best way to do it, but with cards like Aretuza Adept, for example, which is a card that plays weather, those cards I feel like will still see play because, you know, you still get the points of the card that you played as well as the weather, so then if the weather is removed, it's not such a problem. So we'll kind of see how this balances out. I think Skellige Storm is still really good, for example. Anyhow, guys, like I said, give me your feels in the comments below. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I am at Jaggerous. You can see all of my genius predictions. I do, in fact, see the future, so in case you didn't know that. Beyond that, have a fantastic day. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye!